You're listening to the Cash Podcast, creating affluence, success, and happiness with your financial surgeon, Adam Koos, President and Portfolio Manager at Libertas Wealth Management Group at libertaswealth.com.
Hey everybody, first off, thanks so much for joining us. As always, my hope is for you to learn a little bit more on each and every episode that we run so that you become more successful, wealthier, happier, and more educated than you were before you started listening today. Now today, I've got Tim Byrd joining us, and we're going to be talking about everything having to do with sales management, sales leadership, why your company might be struggling to grow, retain clients, and even retain employees. Tim Byrd. Tim is the principal of Summit Sales Consulting, which helps businesses accelerate revenue utilizing the proven sales acceleration platform. After he graduated from Long Island University, he enjoyed a 25-year track record of progressive sales leadership experience, successfully scaling organizations. Specifically, he's led sales teams with annual revenue responsibility from $1 million in revenue upwards of $1 billion in Fortune 500 and private equity-owned companies. And since 2018, he's worked with closely held businesses providing guidance on strategy, methodology, analytics, and human capital to help them achieve truly record-breaking results. He splits time between Miami, Florida and Columbus, Ohio. He and his wife, Cindy, have 2 grown daughters who live in Columbia, Missouri and Columbus, Ohio, respectively. And in his free time, Tim can be found attempting to exercise, as he says, getting in a game of golf whenever his schedule permits, and sitting in the stands at an Ohio State football game during the season. So whether you're a business owner looking to improve sales, scale up and improve your manager's results, or even if you're feeling stuck when it comes to your growth trajectory of your company, this is going to be a great episode for you. So have fun. All right, we've got Tim Byrd here today. Sales acceleration. We're talking about business owners, growth, sales, management, leadership. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks so much for having me, Adam. Looking forward to the discussion.
Most of the listeners and those you watching don't know, but Tim just did a great presentation at the Country Club at Muirfield about a month ago at this point, maybe 6 weeks ago, and very well received, huge crowd. And so after seeing that presentation, I thought it made a whole lot of sense to turn this into a podcast as well for all the people that couldn't make it. In fact, it was standing room only. So I thought it would be a lot of fun to talk about all the things that you discussed at that event. So again, really appreciate you being willing to put your face on YouTube here and let iTunes hear you over the sound waves.
There you go. Well, I look forward to that opportunity.
Sure, yeah. Well, let's jump right into it. Sales leadership, sales management, training, that's your wheelhouse. You know, when you walk into a business, like a typical business, and you're sitting in the conference room with management, you know, what are some of the typical things that you see after evaluating their sales team? Maybe it's things that business owners aren't aware of, or things that are just hidden in plain sight.
Yeah, no, that's it's a great question, Adam, and it's common. I mean, they're typically calling me when some type of a challenge brought us together, right? And so what you tend to find is their challenges are broken down really into one of 4, what I'd call buckets. Typically, their biggest challenge is around methodology, the methodology of how they do business. How are they creating their sales territories? What types of challenges they have? What type of processes do they have in place? Are they effectively using a CRM or not? Often you'll find that they struggle with analysis. They may or may not be setting goals and quotas. They may not have proper comp and incentive plans. And then ultimately, the last 2 come down to strategy and then their organization. And so strategy is really understanding where you sit in terms of your industry, your competitors, and how you're different. And then finally, the organization is about hiring, training, and just struggling with your people. And so commonly their issues are broken down really in that order for a lot of the business owners we sit with.
Okay. So if you're a business owner, I mean, why would you say it's important to train your sales management into leaders? Aside from the obvious, it sounds good, right? On paper, leaders are better than not, but why is that so important?
Yeah, that's a funny comment. Yes, I would tend to agree. Leader sounds better than manager. But I often think about this in terms of really an experience that I saw with one of my clients. And it was a business owner by the name of Bob, super frustrated with the manager he had promoted 5 years or so ago. And the person he had promoted, this gal, was the best salesperson he'd ever had, and knew she was capable of teaching the team the skills that had made her great. Yet, after 4 years declining sales, high turnover, and the same excuses that had kind of come over and over, he was at the end of his rope. He was frustrated and knew something needed to be done. He'd hoped things would improve, however, that day never did arrive. And as we know, hope is not a very good strategy.
No.
And ultimately, he was at a point of pain. And what's really common within that is, as you put that sales leader into place, who maybe had been your best sales manager, they may have the capability, but are they trained and do they have the tools to ultimately be successful? And frequently, getting them that leadership capability, looking at the organization broadly, is what really kind of provides and sets them up for longer term success from the sales function.
I love that. Hope is not a strategy. I can't count the number of times I've used that in my business, because it's so true. Hope is definitely not a good strategy. In fact, it's almost like when you think of sales management, not just sales, but any type of employee that works for the business, if they're not swimming in the right direction or the same direction as everybody else. One of the best other, call it, pieces of advice I ever heard from somebody was, if to determine whether or not you've got the right person on your team, first and foremost, pretend like you were starting all over. And if you were hiring them in an interview, would you hire them today? And if the answer is no, then they probably shouldn't be on your team anymore. But what are some of the common challenges, I guess, that business owners face when building out their sales team? I'm sure there's some business owners listening right now that are watching that they've already been through several challenges, right? And that they could probably do the presentation in terms of what doesn't work. But for those that are building out their team, or maybe they're looking for the answers, what are those struggles?
Yeah, it's a great question. Often what you find is, as the businesses start up, the business owners themselves, in addition to being the kind of the technical wizard behind what they do, they're often the best salespeople. And as they start to build out their organization, sometimes they're not really even sure just how to operate their total business on a day-to-day basis and how to communicate effectively across functions. However, specific to sales, they start to hire salespeople. And as they're making those investments, they become disappointed in terms of the overall results. However, frequently, and going through this right now with a client we just started working with, they'll have some person who is breaking through and having a lot of individual success. And they realize that they either are not predisposed or don't have the time to manage the sales team. And so they'll go and say, hey, you're really good at this, and I'd like to make you the salesperson. Let's go hire others. And then the challenges, start to mount from there.
Okay. So it's almost like I could see this being a vicious cycle, if things don't go well.
That is a very accurate comment.
Yeah. Well, can you share some examples of maybe where lack of tools, processes, where these things that you're talking about maybe affect sales performance for better or worse?
Yeah. Well, we touched upon it a little bit earlier. One of them is certainly around, again, kind of they're in place and they're really not sure how to lead and bring forth sales methodology, right? Again, so, what are the processes on how we're managing the business? How are we taking people through the buying journey? How are we actually leading people to utilize a CRM and provide visibility into the organization? And, other examples of it clearly are things like, again, not being able to build out goals and quotas and not being able to provide proper reporting back to the organization, having ineffective comp plans. Ultimately, the challenge becomes is that new sales leader has not been predisposed to building those out historically. They're used to being an individual contributor. And as an individual contributor, they're able to follow through what's out there for them or leverage what they've done in the past. But ultimately, they have not had the experience to build it out for others. And that lack of knowledge is foundational to kind of where the challenge begins.
Got it. So it's like you're the business owner, you're driving all the growth for the most part. And I think it's what I'm hearing here is you're trying to figure out how to do what all these people and consultants say in the world, which is to stop working so much within your business and work more on your business so you can have more free time to do other things that are more important for the company. And really more importantly than that, spend more time with your family. Because as we all know, when we're sitting on our deathbeds, nobody's ever going to go, oh, I wish I would have worked an extra few hours. So, it sounds like lack of knowledge also affects sales performance. What are some examples of how lack of knowledge affects the sales team?
Sure. That's again a great question there with regards to kind of what happens next. Ultimately what happens is, I described to you a little bit about that person as an individual contributor. And they're very used to going out, often eating what they kill, and very used to working independently versus in a team environment.
And this is the sales manager.
This is your sales manager.
Okay.
Yeah. And so ultimately, they're not really sure per se what are the things that they need to do to go develop that team and work interdependently. So an example could be, in some instances, they're not out actually riding and spending time with salespeople and coaching and developing them. And so in that instance, their salespeople are out flying blind without being supported. And that sales leader is not able to provide them coaching, or that manager, I should say. However, in other instances, they may figure out that is something they should be doing. However, their independent nature takes over and they start taking over the sales calls themselves and become, that best salesperson. And so ultimately your salesperson is sitting there watching you run the entire call versus being a coach to them. And so those are two really, really common things. And we touched upon it a little bit earlier, the ability to strategize, prioritize within a broader organization, the broader sales organization is often lacking with regards to, knowing who your best customers are, prioritizing them, prioritizing opportunities, and understanding how to share what some of those differences are between us and others. And so those are skills that can certainly be filled for a person that has the capability.
That's got to be tough, though. I mean, I just imagine as a business owner myself, if you're, we don't really have sales teams here in our business. It's just it's not our industry, obviously. But I imagine that I could see how that business owner would feel if they're passionate about their business, which obviously they are. They wouldn't be doing it. It's their baby, and they love what they do so much. They've got this burning desire to share all their knowledge, and then they have to sit there and watch someone else do it, probably not as well as they would, right? I mean, I get that.
Yeah, no question. Well, you don't want no ugly babies, that's for sure, right?
Right. Well, how does this impact the businesses, with ineffective sales managers? What's that look like?
Yeah, well, it impacts the managers, and it impacts the business in a number of ways. I guess I'd call them, the signs that you've got an issue with your ineffective manager. One of the first things you'll start seeing is you'll see lower revenue results than what you'd hoped for, what you'd seen historically. You'll also start noticing that you're losing existing customers. And that is, from a standpoint of cuts, those are some of the hardest cuts. Acquiring customers is really expensive. And ultimately, they wanted to do business with you in the past. However, now they've chosen. And so, how long can you allow that to go on? And then finally, from an internal perspective, you start seeing high turnover from your reps because those reps aren't getting the coaching they need. They aren't getting the leadership they need. And they ultimately think that the grass is greener in other places. Very common in regards to those challenges.
I just wrote those all down. So business owners, if they might not even know what's wrong. It's like having a bad day where you don't know what's wrong. Yeah, I'm sure you've had those days where you wake up, you just like you woke up on the wrong side of the bed. You can't figure it out. But in your business, if you're running a company, you're like, my revenue's lower than usual. Things aren't going like like they used to, or like things just seem off. Number one. Number two, we're losing existing clients, and some of these people were surprised that they would ever leave. And then last, on top of all that, we've got this cancer brewing inside the company where we're losing employees when we're paying them well. The culture's, I think it's good. And then things just aren't going so well. So those three things are things that business owners should be looking out for then, if they might have, of all things, a poor salesman management structure. Is that what I'm hearing?
Absolutely.
Okay. That's interesting. What are some of the things that tell me some of the secrets, some of your secret sauce? What are some of the things that you are talking to these business owners and their sales teams about that address these shortfalls?
Yeah, and ultimately with the focus on the manager itself, it's about timely handling of the situation, and ultimately breaking down for that individual where they are from a skill perspective, the skills they have, the skills they don't that are required to be successful, and ultimately identifying if they can be filled in a timely fashion, in a fashion that your company can tolerate. And if they cannot, then they need to be replaced.
Okay.
And if you do think that those skills can be filled in a timely manner, and you believe they have the capability, then you want to supplement that with training. And a lot of times people use different terminology for that, but ultimately, right person, right seat is a comment that people may have heard from Jim Collins many years ago. Good to great, and I know EOS utilizes it as well. If you've got the wrong person, well, regardless, you got to figure out, do they exit? They likely will need to exit your organization. If they're the right person, do they need to be in a different seat, or again, do they need the skills filled in? So ultimately, that's what it is. And the folks that have the capability, and just even in general, managers are looking for training and development. Often, again, a silver bullet that comes out is, hey, let's go train our salespeople versus our sales manager. And 96% of managers in a survey of about 3,000 companies we've done over the last few years say they would value and seek training opportunities. Yet only about 80% of companies will tell you that they actually put a budget against that.
Interesting.
So the delta there is 96 minus 20. So about 73/4 of folks aren't getting the training that they desire.
I imagine there's a procrastination component too, pulling the trigger just for lack of knowledge. Again, kind of going back to something you said earlier, just whether they know they have a problem first of all, and then once they recognize there's an issue, from there it's like, how do I get help? Obviously that's what you do, right?
Yeah, no question. And ultimately, we often step in and we'll work with the sales leaders and take them through basically a systematic approach to develop their skills that they would be able to then apply those within the organization very quickly and make a positive impact on the revenue line for those companies.
I was just going to say, I'm assuming there's probably some pretty measurable statistics that can show whether or not that training is making an impact.
Yeah, I mean, we've been doing this for a while, and if I recall the numbers, it's somewhere in the range of 90% have deemed, after going through that training with the right person, that they had significant revenue growth.
Wow.
We had about 5 or so share that they had nominal or kind of a reasonable amount, and so when you round that out, there was only a handful of companies that had challenges, but yeah, it was in fact on significant. I think it's actually 93, so 98% reported significant revenue growth after going through that program.
Well, I imagine sometimes people get in their own way. If you've got the wrong person in the seat, then there's probably situations with relationships. People don't want to make the change and put them in a new position, or worse, have to part ways with that person. That's never fun, especially again, if there's a relationship there, if they've been around for a long time, even though if it's the best thing for the business, right?
Absolutely.
Well, let me ask you one last question. What are some trends? There's been a lot that's changed this last few years, and not just in sales, but the whole world, especially since the pandemic. So, I mean, what are some trends that business owners should be, looking out for? There's been disruptions this last few years, COVID, the pandemic, Zoom, face-to-face meetings versus not. What should business owners be aware of when they're thinking about their growth trajectory and their sales going forward?
Yeah, that's a great question, and a common one that I hear regularly. I guess I typically drop it into four buckets of kind of trying to simplify it. Value-based selling is really the new norm. Virtual selling is here to stay. Integration of CRM and marketing automation, and leveraging AI in the sales process are four kind of trends I think that should be on everybody's radar.
Two follow-up questions to that. You said values-based selling. Is that what you said?
Value-based. Yep.
Value-based. Explain that. Elaborate.
Yeah, no, happy to do that. Ultimately, it comes down to prospects want to know what problem you're going to solve. And basically, your solution has to be relevant to their unique problem. And so understanding what their challenge is and how your organization's unique value proposition will help them to be more successful is going to help to drive more revenue.
Okay. And then what about the AI front? So you mentioned AI is a big thing now. We all hear about, artificial intelligence. We've seen it in movies for the last decade. But in terms of sales, what's that mean?
Yeah, it plays out in a few ways. I mean, one, from a standpoint of organizations, I mean, there's actually algorithms out there that are helping us select prospects most likely to purchase, ironically.
Wow.
And it's also used from a standpoint to provide insights to the stages within your unique sales process in regards to what's the likelihood of success. And finally, it's really helping boost productivity by doing simple tasks. Examples, note-taking, appointment setting, things along those lines that, are things that folks tend to spend more time than they need, taking them away from selling and talking to their clients.
So more relationships, I'm hearing as well. And
it enables you to have more relationships by getting rid of those mundane tasks.
Okay. That's interesting. AI, who would have thought, 20 years ago?
Yeah, there's definitely a few things that have certainly changed, no question.
Well, if somebody wants to get a hold of you, and business owners, entrepreneurs that are looking and maybe having some of these painful experiences that we've been talking about today, how do they get a hold of you?
You can reach me through a number of ways. My email address, which is TByrd at salesxceleration.com, and that's XCELERATION.com. Or I could be reached by phone at 609-577-4090. And they can also find me through my website, which is www.salesxceleration.com.
All right. And for any of you who are listening, by the way, or watching, it doesn't really make a difference. We'll be sure to put Tim's contact information, his website, email, phone, all in the podcast notes and the content below. So if you have any questions, if you're looking to get an introduction call set up and see what he might be able to do for you, your sales team, your business, your growth, feel free to reach out. Never hurts to at least check the oil, right, and see how things are going. So, Tim, thank you so much for jumping on. This was fun. I was glad we were able to do this one-on-one because I felt like I was, hastily jotting notes down at your presentation 6 weeks ago and barely had a chance to keep up. So, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it.
No, thank you again for the opportunity. Enjoyed the opportunity to speak with you and your audience.
For sure. All right. Take care, everybody. Have a great day. All right, that's it for today's show. If you know a business owner who might benefit from this episode, please, by all means, feel free to pass it along. And if you are a growth-minded business owner looking to grow the enterprise value of your company, improve your retirement planning, and ultimately exit your business someday, reach out to me so we can set up a confidential introduction call and get to know each other a little bit better. Our website is libertaswealth.com. If you'd like to go there, check us out. You can contact us through our contact page. Or if you'd like to email us directly, you can do so at info@libertaswealth.com. As always, there are thousands and thousands of podcasts out there. You chose to give hours a listen today. So thank you so much for tuning in. Be sure to subscribe on both iTunes and YouTube. And remember, you can sign up at libertaswealth.com to not only get these updates, but all our other screencasts, videos, and articles directly delivered to your inbox whenever we distribute them. Feel free to follow us on Facebook at facebook.com/libertaswealth. I'm also on Twitter at Adam Koos. as well as Instagram at Financial Surgeon. So thank you so much once again for joining us, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you for listening to the Cash Podcast with your financial surgeon, Adam Koos. To see any charts or images that were mentioned in this show, or to check out additional articles, videos, and other educational resources, head over to libertaswealth.com.